Here I have a CDJ2000 Nexus edition. Super shiny, looks good and everything, except our link port right here, this guy, is not staying connected. So when there's an Ethernet cable plugged into here, sometimes it can kind of be jostled out, and that's no good if you're playing on CDJs and having the link function enabled. That can really mess up your set. That's a set ender right there. That's what I call that. Anything that goes wrong with your gear that completely cripples the entire system, that's a set ender. So today we're going to fix this set ender so we no longer have to worry about that coming undone in the middle of a set. So this right here is the offending part. Just this little guy right here. It's about $9 if you get it from an electronics wholesaler. If you get it direct from Pioneer, I think it's like $30, something like that. It's the same part number, so should have no problem with this. And this will work for both CDJ2000s, 2000 Nexuses, CDJ900s, and 900 Nexuses. I'm not 100% certain on the 900 Nexus since I haven't seen that explicitly stated by Pioneer that this part is interchangeable, but I don't know why it would be any different. So yeah, first step is cracking open the CDJ. You got to separate the bottom half from the top half. It kind of opens like a clamshell, and you do that by finding these little screws with the arrow marks on them. So we've got two on the back panel here, so we'll go ahead and undo those. And as I'm opening this up, I want to remind you that before you perform any sort of open heart surgery on your expensive equipment, that you're doing it at your own risk. This video is for entertainment purposes only, right guys? You're not gonna go and open up your own CDJ to save a lot of money instead of, you know, sending it in to have it officially repaired at a Pioneer authorized repair center, right? Because you have all that money laying around that you just want to waste by sending it into an authorized center so you can keep your warranty. Yeah, right. Also, before you start cracking on anything super expensive and electronic, make sure you discharge your static on a piece of metal that's grounded, and make sure that while you're opening this up that it internally no longer has any stored energy in the capacitors. So if you just powered down the unit, you should probably wait about 10 minutes to make sure that all the caps inside have fully discharged, so you don't run the risk of accidentally shorting something on the inside, and you're going to have a way worse time fixing even more stuff that you didn't intend to break if you do that. Okay, so our next maneuver we're going to do is we're going to flip this over, kind of clamshell it open, but to do this I have to kind of move this out of the picture, and we're going to flip the bottom of the base into our work area, just like that. Because as you can see, this ribbon cable right here only lets you open it one way. So now that we got this open, let's talk a little bit about the tools that we are going to need. We just used a Phillips head screwdriver to undo the screws on the bottom and the back of the case. I always have my multi-tool. That's a Leatherman OHT. We're going to use the knife on this to pry up on the PCB between the jack that I just showed you and the PCB. Soldering iron. This is a really cheap Radio Shack one. It's variable wattage. You're also going to need your solder. I use self-cleaning acid paste flux. That's my favorite method of using flux. You're also going to need solder wick. So it's basically just a really fine copper braid, basically, that sucks in the old solder from the part that we're going to be replacing. And that's pretty much it. I need to make sure that I state it again. This is not a beginner's repair to do. You should have a little bit of intermediate soldering skills, or feel comfortable at least, you know, taking your CDJ's life in your own hands. Alright, so our first order of business, we're going to disconnect the only thing that electronically connects the upper and lower halves of the CDJ. at this side of the board on the bottom side. So just lift up firmly on this ribbon cable, get that guy out of the way. I'm going to move this whole panel with all the goodies and stuff off to the side. So basically what we're going to be doing is we're going to be taking this PCB, the green printed circuit board that I'm kind of showing you with my fingers right here, we're going to be taking that out and replacing this jack by unsoldering this one and resoldering the new one. So to do that, first you have to remove all of these little ribbon cables. I should mention that on the 2000 Nexus, this particular cable is new versus the regular 2000. The regular 2000 has a USB cable that actually comes down into this area down here. It's not that much of a difference, but it's worth noting at least. Disconnect this ribbon cable. And now we're going to unscrew the four corners of this PCB. This particular screw is also holding down a piece of plastic and foam vibration insulation, so keep those two together. And if you're ever curious about which board screws you need to unscrew, they always, or pretty much always, have a little orange arrow next to them. So that one says number 2 with an arrow. Got more arrows up here. Just remove all the ones with the arrows. Now this board we don't need to remove, but I do need to remove this, or at least scoot to the side, this plastic covering so that I can get under here and remove this last ribbon cable that's kind of hiding underneath here. That guy will just snap out like that. And before I pull this up, I want to talk a little bit about what's underneath. So there's a ribbon cable and a power ribbon cable. One for data, one for power underneath here. So the power one is directly underneath these capacitors right here, and the data is underneath this side over here. So you have to be kind of careful. You're going to be pulling them out anyways, but it's better to pull them out carefully with your fingers than to just rip it out by pulling the whole board up. So we got those two cables detached. You can see it flips pretty much just like this. And you can see our power input right here, and the smaller ribbon cable over here, and the corresponding cables down here. So now we just have to worry about this part. So now we have our board and we can take a look at it here and see exactly what we're dealing with. We have these two soldered on pins that are not for data or anything, they're just for securing the jack on there, and then we have our data inputs on the back, data inputs and output connectors on the back. So what we need to do is unsolder those, unsolder these, pry the thing off, and replace it. Now what I've done is, after I've removed the old jack, I've gone ahead on the printed circuit board and placed a little bit more solder back on the pads from to replace the solder that had been sucked up. So now when I place this down, I should just be able to tag each one of these pins. And there we have it, a newly soldered jack. So we're going to go ahead and replace this guy in the CDJ. So here we have our bottom tray again. We're going to take our newly fixed PCB and we are going to attempt to plug these cables in before we get the board set down. And this is kind of hard because of the angle the cables are. I recommend doing this little ribbon guy first, since it's slightly longer. What can sometimes help is you can actually use the port on the back to kind of see in there, and you can see how you can kind of get your finger in there. Okay, so that's in there securely. Now we just do everything in reverse order. Pretty easy from this point. Next you want to put the screws back in with the plastic shield, don't forget about that. Before we put this silver screw onto this board with the tightens down this rotating plastic piece, we want to get this last ribbon cable, which is really annoying to get back in and actually kind of hurts your fingers a bit. We need to get this guy cinched in. What I do is I hold it down at the connector with one of my fingers, and then I position it with that finger, and then I kind of like coil up the cable on the other side so that I can get it straight in and push it in with kind of the cable sort of bunched up. And then we get our USB connection in there, can't forget that. And then our SD card connection with our plastic little grippy guy, retention clip I guess you would call it. And there, our connections are back together. Sweet. So now, let's get the other half of the CDJ, plug that ribbon cable in and flip it over. Ribbon cable. In. Flip this guy over. Make sure all your connections are connected because you don't want to have to open this back up. Ask me how I know. And then, to secure this, we go back to the other side. Make sure you hold both sides with both hands. And we're going to secure down our case. And there we go, brand new link adapter. Then of course, the moment of truth, you always have to hold your breath as you power it on and hope you did not brick your entire CDJ by shorting it out. Look at that, I didn't brick it this time. Sweet. So that is how you fix a broken CDJ link port.